The great meeting hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Creatures of all shapes and sizes sat around the massive circular table. Some had 4 arms, others had scales that changed color when they spoke. A few breathed different gases and wore special masks. This was the Galactic Council, where the most important beings in known space came to talk about trade, borders, and keeping peace. Kelath was the oldest member present. His gray skin showed the deep lines of someone who had lived for 800 years. As the chief historian of the Vorthak people, he knew more about the galaxy's past than anyone else. Today, something had been bothering him during the boring talk about shipping routes. "There is something I must share," Kelath said, his voice cutting through the chatter. The room grew quiet. When Kelath spoke about history, people listened. "In the old archives, deep in our most ancient storage vaults, I have found stories about a race called humans." He paused, watching the confused faces around the table. "They traveled the stars 3,000 years ago, then they vanished completely." Most of the council members looked at each other and shrugged. They had never heard of any humans, but Admiral Taman of the Corvan Defense Fleet leaned forward in his chair. His blue skin darkened, which happened when he was thinking hard. "Tell us more about these humans," Taman said. Kelath touched a control pad and images appeared in the air above the table. They showed strange ships with smooth lines and odd designs. The ships looked nothing like anything the current galaxy used. "The records are damaged and hard to read," Kelath explained. "But it seems these humans were different from other races. They fought something terrible. Something so bad that all records about the enemy were destroyed on purpose. Probably just old stories," said Counselor Vex, a large creature with thick armor plating. "Races disappear all the time. Space is dangerous." But Taman had spent years studying old battlefields. He had found strange wreckage in the outer parts of the galaxy. Ships that used technology no one could understand. Ships that might have belonged to these mysterious humans. "I think there might be truth in these stories," Taman said quietly. Far away from the council meeting on a world called Kepler 442b, massive mining machines dug deep into the planet's surface. The world was rich in rare metals, and dozens of alien companies had set up operations there. The work was hard, but the pay was good. Dr. Yuna supervised the dig sites. She was an archaeologist who made sure the miners didn't destroy anything important from the past. Most days were boring. The miners found old rocks and sometimes the bones of dead animals. Nothing exciting ever happened. That changed when miner Deho called her over to Site 7. "Doc, you need to see this," Deho said, his voice shaking with excitement. "We found something big. Really big." Yuna followed him down into the deep pit the machines had carved. At the bottom, the rock had been cleared away to show something that definitely wasn't natural. A wall made of metal stretched as far as she could see in both directions. The metal was dark gray and covered with strange patterns. "How deep does it go?" Yuna asked. "We don't know yet. But it's huge. Maybe the size of a whole city." Yuna felt her heart beat faster. In 30 years of digging up the past, she had never found anything like this. She called for her best team and special equipment. Whatever was buried here had been hidden for a very long time. It took 2 weeks to find an entrance. The door was round and covered with symbols no one could read. When Yuna's team finally got it open, stale air rushed out. The air was safe to breathe, but it felt old. Very old. Inside, they found corridors that seemed to go on forever. Emergency lights still worked, casting a dim blue glow. The walls were lined with doors, and behind each door was a room full of machines. Strange machines that hummed with power even after all these years. "The power source is still working," said her assistant Minhyuk, staring at his scanner in amazement. "After thousands of years, it's still working." They explored deeper into the facility. Some rooms had computers with screens showing words in a language they didn't recognize. Other rooms had weapons that looked deadly, even though no one knew how to use them. But the most important discovery was in the deepest level. Yuna found herself in a vast chamber filled with hundreds of clear containers. Each container was about the size of a person and filled with strange liquid. Most were dark and empty. but one still glowed with soft light. Inside the glowing container, Yuna could see a figure floating in the liquid. It looked almost like the pictures of humans from Kalath's old records. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with hair. The being wore some kind of uniform and had strange devices attached to its body. "Is it alive?" Minhyuk whispered. Yuna checked her scanners. "Yes, barely, but yes, it's in some kind of deep sleep." She took pictures and measurements. According to her equipment, the container and the being inside were over 3,000 years old. This was impossible. No known technology could keep someone alive that long. But as she studied the container more closely, she found controls, buttons and screens that were starting to light up. The ancient systems had detected her presence and were beginning to wake up. "We need to get experts here," Yuna said. Real fast. News of the discovery spread quickly. Within days, scientists from dozens of worlds arrived at Kepler 442b. The Galactic Council sent their best people. Even Admiral Taman came to see for himself. Standing in front of the glowing container, Taman felt a chill run down his spine. The being inside looked peaceful, but something about it seemed dangerous, like a weapon waiting to be used. "The container is responding to our presence," Dr. Yuna explained to the gathered scientists. "I think it's designed to wake the person inside if certain conditions are met." "Should we wake it up?" asked Dr. Kyunho, a specialist in alien biology. "That's the big question," Yuna replied. "We don't know what we're dealing with. This could be the last survivor of an extinct race, or it could be something much more dangerous." The debate went on for hours. Some scientists wanted to study the container more before doing anything. Others wanted to wake the being immediately. Admiral Taman listened to all the arguments, but his military mind was thinking about something else. If this really was one of the humans from the old stories, then it might know things about the galaxy's past that could be important, maybe even vital for the future. "I think we should wake it up," Taman finally said, "but carefully, with full security measures in place." 2 days later, everything was ready. Security forces surrounded the chamber. Medical teams stood by. Recording. Equipment captured every moment. Dr. Yuna placed her hand on the container's control panel. The ancient systems responded, and the liquid inside began to drain away. Slowly, the figure inside began to move. The being's eyes opened for the first time in 3,000 years. They were brown and very human, just like in the old pictures. But there was something else in those eyes, a sadness that seemed to go on forever. The being sat up slowly, coughing and breathing hard. It looked around the chamber with confusion and growing alarm. When it saw all the alien faces staring at it, it tried to back away. "Where am I?" the being asked in a language no one understood. Dr. Yuna stepped forward carefully. She activated her universal translator, hoping it would work with such an old language. "You are safe," she said gently. "My name is Yuna. What is your name?" The being stared at her for a long moment. When the translation finally came through, its voice was filled with disbelief. "My name is Jiho," he said. "Captain Jiho of the Earth Defense Force. But that's impossible. Earth is gone. My people are gone. Everything is gone." And with those words, the last human began to weep for a world and a people lost to history. Captain Jiho sat in the medical bay staring at his hands. They looked the same as they had 3,000 years ago. But everything else had changed. The galaxy he knew was gone. His friends, his family, his entire species, all dust in the void of space. Dr. Yuna entered the room carrying a tray of food. She had been taking care of Jiho for the past week, helping him understand what had happened while he slept. It was not an easy job. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, setting the tray down on the small table beside his bed. Jiho looked up at her with tired eyes. "Like a ghost from the past," he said. "Tell me again about this Galactic Council. How many species are there now?" 47 major races, Yuna replied, sitting down in the chair across from him. Hundreds of smaller ones. The galaxy is more crowded now than it was in your time. And none of them remember humans. Only very old stories. Most people think humans are just myths. Jiho laughed. but there was no humor in it. Myths. My people fought and died to save this galaxy, and now we're just stories parents tell their children. Dr. Yuna had heard this bitterness in his voice before. In the week since his awakening, Jiho had told her pieces of what he remembered. A great war against something called the Devourers. Massive fleets of human ships leaving the galaxy. A desperate plan to lead the enemy away from populated worlds. Tell me about the Exodus fleet again, she said. You mentioned it before. Jiho's expression changed. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by something else. Hope, maybe, or determination. The Exodus fleet was our final plan, he said. When we realized we couldn't win the war here, we decided to take the fight elsewhere. 1,000 ships carrying the best of humanity. Scientists, soldiers, engineers. They left to fight the Devourers in the void between galaxies. But you stayed behind. Someone had to. I was part of the rear guard. We stayed to destroy any evidence that could lead the enemy to the Exodus fleet. Then we went into deep sleep, waiting for the day when it would be safe to call them home. Yuna felt her heart skip a beat. Call them home? You mean they might still be alive? Jiho reached into the pocket of the uniform he still wore. He pulled out a small device that looked like a smooth stone. When he touched it, symbols appeared on its surface. This is a quantum beacon, he said. It can send a signal across any distance, even between galaxies. If the Exodus fleet still exists, this will reach them. Have you activated it? Not yet. I need to know if it's safe, if the 2 hours are truly gone. The last thing I want is to call my people home to another war. Across the galaxy, Admiral Taman was having trouble sleeping. For the past 3 nights he had been having the same dream. Massive ships moving through dark space. Ships unlike anything he had ever seen. They were heading toward the galaxy, coming home after a long journey. He woke up in his quarters aboard the battleship Determination, sweat covering his blue skin. The dreams felt real. Too real. He had been a military man for 60 years and his instincts told him something important was happening. His personal communicator buzzed. A message from Dr. Yuna on Kepler 442b. Admiral, I think you need to come back here. Jiho wants to show us something. Taman was on a ship heading back to Kepler 442b within hours. When he arrived, he found Dr. Yuna and Captain Jiho waiting for him in the underground facility where Jiho had been found. Thank you for coming, Jiho said. I've been thinking about what you told me. About the strange ship designs you found. I think I can help explain them. Jiho led them to a wall covered with symbols. He touched several of the symbols in a particular order, and suddenly the wall came alive with light. Images appeared, showing star maps and ship designs. This is a human database, Jiho explained. It contains the history of our war against the Devourers. The images that followed made Taman's blood run cold. He saw recordings of planets being consumed by something that looked like living darkness, cities turning into twisted metal and flesh, entire star systems going dark as something unthinkable fed on them. The Devourers aren't just another enemy, Jiho said. They're a cosmic plague. They turn everything they touch into extensions of themselves. Planets become neural networks. Stars become power sources. Living beings become something else. Dr. Yuna stared at the horrific images. How did humanity fight something like that? We adapted, Jiho said simply. We had to. We created weapons that could disrupt their biotechnology. We modified our own bodies to resist their influence. We built ships that could survive in the void between galaxies. He touched another control, and new images appeared. These showed human ships, but they looked nothing like the peaceful vessels in the old records. These ships were weapons of war, sleek and deadly, covered in armor and bristling with guns. The ships you've been finding, Admiral, those are from the early days of the war. By the time the Exodus fleet left, our technology had advanced far beyond anything shown here. Admiral Taman studied the images carefully. Even the early human warships were more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. What would 3,000 years of development have produced? Where is the Exodus fleet now? He asked. Jiho pulled out the quantum beacon again. I don't know, but this can find them. The question is whether I should activate it. What's stopping you? Fear, Jiho admitted. What if the Devourers followed them? What if calling them home brings death to this galaxy? What if they've changed so much that they're no longer human? Dr. Yuna put a gentle hand on Jiho's shoulder. What if they're the only hope this galaxy has? Before Jiho could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Admiral Taman's communicator buzzed with urgent messages from his ship. Admiral? His first officer's voice crackled through the device. We're detecting massive space-time distortions on the edge of the galaxy. Something big is coming through hyperspace. Taman looked at Jiho with new understanding. The dreams? He said. I've been having dreams about ships in dark space. Jiho's face went pale. That's impossible. The beacon hasn't been activated. Maybe it doesn't need to be, Dr. Yuna said. Maybe just waking you up was signal enough. They rushed to the surface and looked up at the night sky. At first, everything seemed normal. Then Taman pointed to a section of stars that seemed to be moving. There, he said. Something's blocking the starlight. In the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about strange sensor readings. Ships that appeared and disappeared on long-range scanners. Gravitational anomalies that suggested massive objects moving through space. Commander Nari of the Hegemony. Intelligence Division was in charge of analyzing the reports. She was known for her sharp mind and ability to see patterns others missed. What she was seeing now didn't make sense. The objects are approaching from multiple directions, she reported to the emergency council session. Whatever they are, they've been coordinated. This isn't random. Could it be an invasion? Asked Counselor Vex. Unknown. The objects don't match any known ship designs. They're too big to be natural phenomena, but they're not responding to any communications. Back on Kepler 442b, Jiho made a decision. He activated the quantum beacon. If they're already coming, they need to know the galaxy isn't empty, he said. They need to know there are innocents here who don't deserve to die for humanity's war. The beacon pulsed with energy that human science had learned to manipulate. The signal raced across space faster than light, faster than thought, carrying a simple message. Home is safe, come carefully. Others live here now. Deep in space, beyond the edge of the galaxy, something vast received the signal. Ships that had been traveling for 3,000 years changed course slightly. The message was understood. Admiral Taman received another urgent message from his ship. Sir, we're detecting a response signal. It's coming from the same direction as the approaching objects. What does it say? We can't decode it, but it's definitely a response to something. And Admiral, the objects are moving faster now. They'll reach the outer colonies within days. Jiho looked up at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, his people were coming home. But were they still the humans he remembered? Or had 3,000 years of war against cosmic horror changed them into something else entirely? God help us all, he whispered. What have I done? The first human ship appeared without warning at the edge of the Kepler system. It was nothing like the vessels in the ancient records or even the warships from Jiho's database. This ship was a thing of beauty and terror, smooth as liquid metal, but hard as diamond. It was 3 kilometers long and covered with strange patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Admiral Taman watched from the bridge of his flagship as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The human ship didn't show up normally on their equipment. It was like trying to look at a shadow that cast light instead of darkness. It's beautiful, whispered his communications officer, Young Ho. It's terrifying, Taman replied. Something that advanced could destroy our entire fleet without effort. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Jiho stood with Dr. Yuna, watching the sky. Even without telescopes, they could see the new star that had appeared. The human ship was so large, it reflected sunlight like a small moon. Is that one of yours? Dr. Yuna asked. Jiho shook his head slowly. No. My people didn't have ships like that. This is what 3,000 years of war has created. A new voice spoke from behind them. Then perhaps we should introduce ourselves. They turned to see a figure walking toward them across the landing. Pad. At first glance, it looked human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with dark hair. But as it came closer, the differences became clear. The being was tall, much taller than any human Jiho remembered. Its skin was pale, almost white, like someone who had never seen natural sunlight. Its eyes were larger than normal and seemed to glow with a soft blue light. When it moved, there was something too smooth about its motions, as if its bones and muscles had been redesigned for efficiency. "I am Captain Suho of the reconnaissance vessel Distant Hope," the being said in perfect, unaccented Standard Galactic. "I believe you are the one who sent the recall signal." Jiho stepped forward. "I am Captain Jiho, Earth Defense Force. Are you human?" Suho smiled, and his teeth were too white and too perfect. "I am what humans have become. We are still your people, Jiho. But we have had to change to survive what we found in the void." Dr. Yuna activated her recording equipment. This was the most important first contact in galactic history. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "The advance fleet numbers 50 ships," Suho replied. "We came ahead to assess the situation. The main Exodus fleet will arrive in 47 days. "How many ships in the main fleet?" Suho's glowing eyes focused on her with uncomfortable intensity. 943 vessels, approximately 12 million humans, plus our allies. Allies? We were not the only species fleeing the Devourers. Others joined us in the void. Together, we have become something new. Admiral Taman's voice crackled through Jiho's communicator. "Captain Jiho, we're receiving a request from the human ship. They want permission to approach the planet." Jiho looked at Captain Suho. "Your ship wants to land?" "Not land. We have been in space for 3 millennia. Planetary gravity is uncomfortable for us now. But we would like to send down more representatives. Your species needs to understand what is coming." Within hours, the landing pad was filled with figures that had once been human. They came in different shapes and sizes, but all bore the marks of extensive modification. Some had extra arms for working in zero gravity. Others had enlarged heads to house improved brains. A few had skin that seemed to be part machine, part flesh. Dr. Yuna interviewed them one by one, trying to understand what humanity had become. The stories they told were both amazing and frightening. "We live for centuries now," explained Commander Nari, a woman whose eyes had been replaced with mechanical sensors. "The war demanded that we preserve our knowledge and experience. Death became a luxury we could not afford. We can survive in hard vacuum," said Lieutenant Minho, showing her arms that ended in hands with retractable claws. "When the Devourers destroyed our ships, we learned to fight in space itself. We think faster than our ancestors," added Engineer Soyoung, her skull visibly larger than a normal human's. Processing information quickly meant the difference between salvation and absorption by the enemy. But it was Colonel Unji who showed Dr. Yuna something that made her blood run cold. The colonel looked the most human of all the representatives, but when she demonstrated her capabilities, it became clear why the others treated her with such respect. "We had to become weapons," Unji said simply. She moved so fast that Dr. Yuna's eyes couldn't follow the motion. One moment, the colonel was standing 10 meters away. The next, she was beside Dr. Yuna, having crossed the distance in less than a second. "Our reflexes are faster than your sensors," Unji continued. "Our strength can crush steel. Our minds can process combat data faster than your computers. We became these things because the alternative was extinction." Jiho watched the demonstrations with growing unease. These beings were his people, but they were also something else entirely. Something that could destroy the current galactic civilization without breaking a sweat. "What happened to Earth?" he asked Captain Suho during a private moment. Suho's expression darkened. "The Devourers found it 800 years ago. By then, most humans had already left with the Exodus fleet. Those who remained fought to the end. Earth is now part of the Devourer collective. Its blue skies are gone, replaced by the pale flesh of the enemy. And the Devourers? Did you defeat them? We fought them to a standstill, but they are not defeated. They cannot be defeated, only contained. That is why we left the void between galaxies. The barrier we created is failing. In perhaps 50 years, maybe less, they will break through and continue their expansion. Dr. Yuna had been listening to the conversation. Are you saying the Devourers are still coming? Eventually, yes. But that is not our immediate concern. We have detected signals from this galaxy that worry us greatly. Captain Suho activated a device on his wrist, and holographic images appeared in the air. They showed star maps of the local galaxy, with red markers scattered throughout. These energy signatures match early-stage Devourer infiltration, he explained. Someone or something in this galaxy has been experimenting with Devourer biotechnology. Admiral Taman had joined the conversation. That's impossible. No one here knows about the Devourers. Someone does, Suho said grimly. And they have been very busy. We estimate that 12 star systems have been compromised to some degree. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called as species accused each other of harboring ancient weapons. Trade routes were shut down. Military fleets mobilized. But the humans had more immediate concerns. Commander Nari, the modified intelligence specialist, had been analyzing local communications and data networks. The infiltration is more advanced than we initially thought, she reported to Captain Suho. Someone has been studying Devourer technology for at least 50 years. They have created hybrid biomachines and placed them in positions of influence. How many worlds are affected? Unknown. But the pattern suggests a coordinated effort. This is not random experimentation. Someone is preparing for something. Dr. Yuna felt sick. Are you saying we have Devourer agents living among us? Not Devourers exactly, Captain Suho explained, but beings that have been infected with Devourer biotechnology. They may not even know what they have become. The corruption can be subtle, influencing thought patterns and decision-making while leaving the host's personality mostly intact. Colonel Yunji stepped forward. We need to begin immediate screening of government officials and military leaders. Anyone with access to critical infrastructure should be tested. Tested how? Admiral Taman asked. Yunji smiled that too-perfect smile. We have ways. 3,000 years of fighting the Devourers has taught us to recognize their influence. As, if summoned by her words, new alarms began blaring across the planet. Admiral Taman's communicator buzzed with urgent messages. Admiral. His first officer's voice was tight with fear. We're detecting massive energy buildups in 7 different star systems. Something is happening. Something big. Captain Suho's expression grew grim. It appears our arrival has triggered something. The infiltrators know we are here and they are beginning their final phase. Final phase of what? Dr. Yuna demanded. Opening a path for the Devourers, Suho replied. Creating a beacon that will guide the enemy directly to this galaxy. High above them, more human ships were beginning to appear. Each one was a masterpiece of war technology, designed and built by beings who had learned to fight cosmic horror itself. Their dark hulls cast shadows across the surface of Kepler 442b as they took defensive positions. But even with their advanced technology and centuries of experience, the humans knew they were facing a race against time. Somewhere in the galaxy, ancient evil was stirring, and this time there might not be anywhere left to run. The arrival of the main human fleet changed everything. Grand Admiral Hyon's flagship, the Eternal Vigil, emerged from the void like a moving mountain. The ship was so massive that it had its own gravitational field. Smaller vessels orbited around it like moons around a planet. Dr. Yuna stood on the observation deck of Admiral Taman's ship, watching the human armada take position around Kepler 442b. Her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. There were hundreds of ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever produced. How is this possible? She whispered. Captain Jiho stood beside her, but his expression was troubled rather than proud. My people were always good at war. he said quietly. Give us 3,000 years with an enemy that wants to destroy everything we care about, and this is what we become. The Eternal Vigil was a city in space. Its hull stretched for 30 kilometers and was covered with weapon systems that could destroy planets. But more disturbing were the organic elements. Parts of the ship seemed to be alive, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. We had to adapt Devourer biotechnology to fight them, Captain Suho had explained earlier. Our ships are part machine, part living organism. It was the only way to match their capabilities. Grand Admiral Hyun finally came aboard Taemin's ship for the formal first contact meeting. She was even more changed than the other humans. Her skin was perfectly white, almost transparent, and her eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to see everything. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made everyone listen whether they wanted to or not. I am Hyun, commander of the Exodus Fleet, she said. We have returned to find our home galaxy infected with the enemy we have fought for 3 millennia. The meeting room was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Counselor Vex of the Brutarian Empire leaned forward aggressively. You claim this galaxy belongs to you, human. We have lived here for thousands of years. Hyun's glowing eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. This galaxy belongs to whoever can protect it from what is coming. Can you fight beings that turn entire star systems into extensions of their consciousness? Can your weapons destroy enemies that exist partially outside normal space-time? What are you talking about? Demanded President Kira of the Federation. Instead of answering with words, Hyun activated a holographic projector. The air above the conference table filled with images that made several delegates sick to their stomachs. The first image showed a planet that looked normal from space. Green continents, blue oceans, white clouds. But as the view zoomed in, the horror became clear. The continents were not land, but living flesh. The oceans were filled with a liquid that pulsed like blood. The clouds were made of spores that could infect any organic matter they touched. This was Kepler 438b, one of the first worlds the Devourers consumed in our home galaxy, Hyun explained. The planet still exists, but it is no longer a world. It is an organ in a cosmic entity that spans multiple star systems. The next image showed space itself being infected. Dark veins stretched between planets, connecting them into a vast neural network. Stars burned with an unhealthy light as their energy was harvested to feed the growing organism. The Devourers do not simply conquer territory, Hyun continued. They transform it. Everything that lives becomes part of their collective consciousness. Everything that exists becomes a tool for their expansion. Commander Nari, the modified human intelligence officer, stepped forward. We have detected 7 sites in this galaxy where similar transformations are beginning. Someone has been preparing your galaxy for devourer infection. Admiral Taemin felt his blood run cold. Who would do such a thing? That is what we intend to find out, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Captain Daeon enter the room. She commanded one of the human destroyer vessels, and her modifications were clearly military in nature. Her arms had been replaced with mechanical equivalents that could interface directly with weapons systems. Her spine was visible through her translucent skin, reinforced with metal supports that could handle extreme acceleration forces. We have begun scanning the infected systems, Daeon reported. The pattern suggests a coordinated effort spanning at least 50 years. Someone with extensive resources and knowledge of devourer biotechnology has been preparing beacon sites. Beacon sites for what? Dr. Yuna asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. To call the Devourers here, Grand Admiral Hyun replied. The barriers we created in the void are failing. When they collapse completely, the Devourers will expand in all directions. But if they receive a signal from this galaxy, they will come here first. The room erupted in shouting as delegates realized the implications. Their galaxy was not just threatened by invasion, it was being deliberately targeted by someone among them. We need to identify and stop the infiltrators immediately, Admiral Taemin said, his military training taking over. What do you need from us? Colonel Yunji, who had been standing silently in the corner, spoke up. We need access to your government databases, military records, and communication networks. The infected individuals will have patterns of behavior and contact that we can detect. You're asking us to give you complete access to our most sensitive information, Counselor Vex protested. We are asking you to survive, Hyun replied simply. The choice is yours. The debate continued for hours, but eventually necessity won over pride. The various galactic powers agreed to cooperate with the human investigation, though many did so reluctantly. What the humans found was worse than anyone had imagined. The infection is deep and widespread, Commander Nari reported 3 days later. We have identified at least 40 individuals in positions of power who show signs of devourer influence. Some are fully aware of what they are doing. Others believe they are working for the greater good of the galaxy. Dr. Yuna studied the list of names with growing horror. Some were people she had worked with. Others were respected leaders she had admired for years. How do we know who to trust? She asked. You don't, Colonel Yunji replied bluntly. That is the nature of this enemy. They corrupt from within, turning your strengths against you. The only beings in this room we can be certain about are the unmodified ones who have never left this galaxy. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Admiral Taman rushed to the bridge, followed by the others. Report, he barked at his first officer. Sir, we're detecting massive energy discharges from the Arcturus system. Something is happening to the star itself. The main screen showed long-range sensor data from the Arcturus system. The star was pulsing with unnatural rhythms, and streams of energy were flowing outward toward 7 specific points in space. The beacon is activating, Grand Admiral Hyun said grimly. They are beginning the summoning process. Captain Dion was already checking her combat systems. How long do we have? Unknown. The process could take days or months, but once it begins, it cannot be stopped by conventional means. What about unconventional means? Admiral Taman asked. Hyun's expression grew even more serious. There is one way. We must destroy the beacon sites and everyone connected to them. Completely. No survivors, no infected technology, no traces that could be used to restart the process. You're talking about destroying entire star systems, President Kira said in horror. If necessary, yes. The alternative is the corruption of your entire galaxy, followed by its consumption by the devourers. Dr. Yuna looked at Captain Jiho, hoping to see some sign that the humans were exaggerating the threat, but Jiho's expression was one of grim acceptance. She's right, he said quietly. I've seen what the devourers can do. If they get a foothold in this galaxy, everything you know and love will cease to exist. Outside the ship, the human fleet was already moving into combat formation. Weapon systems that had been designed to fight cosmic horror were powering up. Ships that had survived 3,000 years of war against an implacable enemy prepared for another battle. But this time, the enemy was not some distant threat. The enemy was already among them, working to destroy the galaxy from within. And somewhere in the Arcturus system, ancient evil was beginning to stir as the beacon called across the void, inviting the devourers to come and feast. The final war for the galaxy was about to begin. The first devourer ships appeared at the edge of the galaxy like cancer spreading through healthy tissue. They were not ships in any conventional sense, but living organisms the size of moons. Their hulls pulsed with veins that carried strange fluids, and their surfaces were covered with eyes that watched everything with alien intelligence. Grand Admiral Hyun stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, watching the enemy approach through sensors that could see across impossible distances. Her modified eyes glowed brighter as stress hormones flooded her enhanced nervous system. 3 Devourer seed ships, she reported to the combined fleet. They are heading directly for the beacon sites. We have perhaps 6 hours before they begin the corruption process. Admiral Taman commanded the largest galactic fleet ever assembled. Ships from 47 different species flew in formation with the human vessels, but even he could see that his forces were hopelessly outmatched. Our weapons barely scratched their hulls, reported Captain Minhyuk after the first engagement. It's like shooting at a mountain with a pistol. But the humans had learned to fight this enemy over 3,000 years of war. Captain Daeun led her destroyer squadron in an attack pattern that seemed impossible. Her ships moved through space, like dancers, firing weapons that disrupted the Devourer's biotechnology at the quantum level. Target their neural clusters, she commanded over the fleet communication channel. Don't try to destroy them completely. Cut their connections to each other. The battle raged across 7 star systems simultaneously. Colonel Unji led boarding parties onto the Devourer ships, her enhanced soldiers fighting hand-to-hand with creatures that defied description. Her troops could survive in hard vacuum and move faster than normal humans could even think. The corrupted individuals are fighting alongside the Devourers, she reported during a brief lull in the combat. They have been fully converted to the enemy's cause. Dr. Yuna worked frantically in the medical bay, treating wounded from dozens of species. But the Devourer weapons caused injuries that normal medicine could not heal. Only the human medical technology adapted from captured enemy bioscience could save the victims. How many have we lost? She asked Captain Jiho during one of his visits to check on the casualties. Too many, he replied. But the alternative is losing everything. Captain Suho led a desperate mission to destroy the main beacon in the Arcturus system. His ship, the Distant Hope, dove directly into the star's corona, using its heat to mask their approach. The beacon was a massive structure that had been growing inside the star for decades, feeding on solar energy. It's beautiful, Suho reported as his ship approached the alien construction. And absolutely horrifying. The beacon looked like a flower made of living metal and flesh. Its petals were kilometers wide and covered with patterns that hurt to look at. As they watched, the beacon began to sing, a sound that could be heard, even in the vacuum of space. It's calling to them, Suho realized. The Devourers are using it to coordinate their attack. The mission to destroy the beacon required a sacrifice that everyone understood, but no one wanted to make. Suho's ship would have to fly directly into the structure and detonate their entire fuel supply. The explosion would destroy the beacon, but there would be no escape for the crew. Tell my people that I remember what it means to be human, Suho said over the communication channel as his ship began its final approach. The explosion could be seen across 3 star systems. When the light faded, both the beacon and the Distant Hope were gone. But the Devourer ships suddenly became less coordinated, their attacks more random and desperate. The main beacon is down, Grand Admiral Hyon announced. But there are still 6 secondary sites. We need to destroy them all before the Devourers can establish a new command structure. The fighting continued for days. Ships were lost, heroes died, and entire worlds were evacuated as the battle moved from system to system. But slowly, the combined fleet began to gain ground. Fleet Admiral Minho led the assault on the largest remaining beacon site. His battle group included ships from 12 different species, all working together under human tactical coordination. The aliens had learned to trust the humans' knowledge of Devourer weaknesses, even when the tactics seemed impossible. Follow the human lead, Admiral Taman ordered his captains. They know this enemy better than anyone. The final beacon was destroyed when Commander Nari sacrificed her intelligence ship to deliver a quantum virus directly into the Devourer command network. The virus, developed over centuries of war, turned the enemy's own biotechnology against them. The remaining Devourer ships are becoming disorganized, she reported even as her ship was being torn apart by enemy fire. They're reverting to instinct-driven behavior, much easier to predict and counter. But the real turning point came when the humans revealed their most closely guarded secret. Deep in the holds of their largest ships, they carried something that made even the Devourers afraid. We call them the Purifiers, Grand Admiral Hyon explained to the assembled fleet commanders. We created them from captured Devourer biotechnology, but we reversed their purpose. Instead of corrupting and consuming, they cleanse and restore. The Purifiers were released into the infected star systems, like antibodies fighting a cosmic infection. They were beautiful and terrible, beings of pure energy that could exist in both normal space and the strange dimensions where the Devourers lived. Dr. Yuna watched through her ship's sensors as the Purifiers went to work. Wherever they passed, the Devourer corruption simply ceased to exist. Infected planets were restored to their original states. Converted beings were freed from the enemy's influence. It's like watching a miracle, she whispered, It's the result of 3,000 years of refusing to give up, Captain Jiho replied. My people never stopped believing they could find a way to fight back. The last Devourer ship was destroyed above the world of Kepler 442b, where the whole crisis had begun. Colonel Yunji led the final assault personally, her enhanced soldiers swarming over the enemy vessel like an immune system attacking a virus. When the fighting finally ended, the galaxy was saved. But the cost had been enormous. Entire fleets were gone. Millions of beings had died. 7 star systems would need decades to recover from the damage. Grand Admiral Hyon addressed the survivors from the bridge of her wounded flagship. The immediate threat is over, she announced. But the war against the Devourers continues. They will try again in other galaxies against other species. What happens now? Admiral Taman asked. Now we rebuild, Hyon replied. But we rebuild better. We share our knowledge, our technology, our hard-won wisdom. This galaxy will never again be defenseless against cosmic threats. Dr. Yuna found Captain Jiho standing in the observation deck of the medical ship, looking out at the stars. The human fleet was already beginning to disperse, some ships heading back to the void between galaxies to continue their eternal war, others staying to help with reconstruction. Are you going with them? She asked. Jiho shook his head. My war ended 3,000 years ago. My people have become something I barely recognize, but they're still fighting the good fight. I think I'll stay here and help your people understand what they've inherited. What have we inherited? The responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves, Jiho said. The knowledge that no sacrifice is too great if it preserves life and hope, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest strength comes from being willing to change what you are to defend what you believe in. Above them, the human warships continued their slow patrol of the galaxy's edge. They were changed beings, in impossible machines, but they carried within them something that 3,000 years of war could not destroy. The human spirit that refused to surrender, no matter what the cost. The galaxy was safe. And in the void between the stars, the Guardians kept their eternal watch, ready to cast their shadow over any threat that might emerge from the darkness. Some shadows, Dr. Yuna realized, were meant to protect rather than threaten. And humanity's shadow would forever stand between the galaxy and the hungry darkness that sought to consume it. The war was over. The vigil had just begun.